The Edmonton Oilers just one more win away from clinching and advancing to the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs as they get set to host the LA Kings on Wednesday night. Joining us now from Edmonton, Oiler Bureau Chief Ryan Rishaug and hockey insider Pierre LeBrun now joins us. Guys, did anybody see this coming? The Oilers win the opener 7-4. They win last game by a score of 1-0. Complete opposite extremes of great offense and then winning with great defense. Is there any reason to believe the Oilers will not slam the door on the LA Kings in game number 5?
Well, I mean, LA's plucky, right? They've got some veterans. They've hung around in series before. There's good players over there, and I don't think the Oilers are going to underestimate them at all. I think if they get some goaltending, that gives them a chip in a chair against this Oiler team. I don't think it's fait accompli necessarily, Gino. I think maybe there'd be some discouragement, Pierre, from the idea that they basically threw about as good an LA Kings game as you could throw at the Oilers, and they still ended up losing. But I think if they re-rack that same thing, they might get different results.
Well, 5-on-5, they're actually right there with the Edmonton Oilers. So that's the reason if you're the LA Kings that you think you can extend this series. It's just that they're getting slaughtered everywhere else, as we know, on special teams. I also think the emotional side would be a concern for me for LA. You played a heck of a game at home in Game 4.
Yep.
You threw everything at the Oilers. You limited their shot totals, their chances. You still lost. And I don't care what they're saying publicly. That's got to be a gut punch because that felt like an effort worthy of tying the series. Instead, they're down 3-1. That's what they have to overcome emotionally. The good thing for them, 2 off days for Game 5.
Yeah, Gino, I asked Chris Knobloch, what does that video session look like? Because I would assume a lot of Oiler video sessions are, goals against and breakdowns and that sort of. They were so good defensively. It's so rare they would have to go over video on how to generate more offense. But, I mean, you look at the shot totals, that was pretty unreal that the Kings held the Oilers to that few shots. And so for the Oilers, I mean, they'd be comfortable in a similar type of game, but they're shooting for more than that. They want to generate more than they did in that last game. It'll be interesting to see if LA can come close to stymieing them the same way.
Speaking of lack of offense, we're 4 games into the series. Connor McDavid has 1 goal. Dylan Holloway has more goals than Connor McDavid right now. Here's the question. I appreciate the fact that McDavid's got 9 assists and he still leads the playoffs in scoring. I appreciate that. That's a given. That's a given. But here's my question to you. Is this McDavid consciously choosing to play differently or basically him just saying, this is what the LA Kings will give me, so I'm going to maximize on assists rather than just scoring?
I think it's the zone he's in. I think he's been in this zone all year. Last year, he was kind of in a goal-scoring zone. I think he set out last year to try and hit a goal-scoring wise, and I think he just got himself into that headspace. And so when he'd find himself in those 50-50 shooter-pass scenarios, Pierre, he was shooting it last year all the time. And this year, he just isn't making that same decision necessarily as much. He's still generating just as much offense for his team, his primary points off the charts this year. So he's just in a bit of a different headspace. I don't see him necessarily passing up a ton of grade A shooting chances, though.
I just think his hockey IQ is so high that he understands that this is the way that he can most help his team. I'll give you the example. The 1 goal they scored on Sunday night in LA, if you look at that play, Trevor Moore chases Connor McDavid across the top of the zone on that power play, taking Trevor Moore out of position, and then McDavid goes across to Draisaitl. Draisaitl has the Bush bomb for the power play goal. That was all generated by McDavid, the way he crossed over with the puck and it brought the penalty killer with him. Okay, so he doesn't end up with the goal, but he generated the goal. And I think you've seen a lot of that from McDavid in this series where the Kings are chasing him. They get out of position. Next thing you know, Zach Hyman's open back door. Draisaitl's open on a power play. That's the way to help your team win.
There have been a couple times, too, Gino, where he's loaded it up and fired it on the power play. Hasn't always hit the net with it, but I have seen a few signs that he's trying to keep the kill honest by presenting himself as a shooting threat. When he does that, it kind of opens more stuff around for him. So, yeah, I mean, the goal total is what it is. The point total is pretty impressive, and it's just the zone McDavid's in.
Speaking of generating, Evander Kane. Remember when he said, I got a sports hernia problem, I'm not on top of my game? Well, on the heels of that, he has solids game 1 and 2. Then in game 3, well, Evander Kane's got the Gordie Howe hat trick. In game 4, he smokes Drew Doughty. Can you guys talk about the contribution that Evander Kane has had so far in this series?
Well, this is the reason this guy's on this team. That's why they traded for him and then signed him, is playoff Evander Kane. honestly, I don't think that the Oilers think they need that much from him during the 82-game regular season.
Right.
This is a playoff version of the player that they count on, and they're getting it right now. And, you know, he's been upgraded his role in the lineup here in the playoffs because of it. And all due respect to Warren Foegele, who had a really career year, had a wonderful season.
In a contract year.
Yes. He should not be in your top six if you're a Stanley Cup contender. He should be a really good, smart player in your bottom six. That's the way it should all set up.
I've maintained all season long for the Oilers to get to where they want to go, Gino, which is a Stanley Cup final and potentially winning it. Evander Kane needs to be on one of their top two lines. He needs to be playing well enough that he is bullying his way into that position. He wasn't there for a big chunk of this season. They had trouble finding the right fit for him in the top six. His game didn't necessarily dictate that he belonged in the top six. But for them to get to where they want to go, Evander Kane has to bull his way onto those top two lines, and he has done that. And I give Chris Knobloch a lot of credit here because he didn't force it. He was patient. He waited. He let Kane's play dictate where he played him in the lineup, knowing you probably need more for him. He let it happen naturally, Pierre, and now it's a great fit.
I don't know if this is a perfect comparison, but do you remember Claude Lemieux? There was playoff Claude Lemieux and regular season Claude Lemieux, and they were two completely different hockey players.
Yeah.
I get that vibe from Evander Kane every time. Think about his playoffs 2 years ago in Ballot, Alberta, and so on. So it's what we're seeing again.
Playoff Pierre LeBrun versus regular season Pierre LeBrun. Definitely a noticeable difference as well, Gino. More than anything in the quality of the tie.
I leave him for 4 days, and he's coming at me.
We missed you. Well, it's because you landed, and we're complaining about the snowstorm.
It's May 1st tomorrow. That's all.
No one could do this for 82 games in the regular season, guys. You're a playoff persona. The players are, and so are you guys. It's unbelievably great talent talking about this as well. One last question before we get going. Stuart Skinner gives up 9 goals through the first 2 games, so the Oilers outscore his deficiencies. But he's given up 1 in the last 61. What's the biggest difference you've seen in his game? Is it him elevating his game, or is it the Oilers playing in front of him differently, so he's just not seeing anywhere near the number of pucks or the kind of scoring chances the Kings had in the first couple of games of this series?
Yeah, so for me, through the year watching Stuart Skinner, when he's at his best, he doesn't have to dive around a lot. He's a pretty big guy. He's got a pretty big frame. He's calm in there. But you just get this sense that he's dialed in and he's on it. And I think, Gino, we talked the other day about his ability to have things go wrong, be calm, evaluate it, make adjustments, and make changes. And I think what we saw from Skinner after that game number 2 was some accountability there. And then he got back to this base game where he's calm, he's composed, but he's in the moment and he's on it. And he was ahead of every puck. He just wasn't chasing, and he was in great position. So honestly, it sounds simple, Pierre, but he just dialed himself in.
That's got to be encouraging if you're the Oilers. Remember, Stuart Skinner got pulled 3 of his last 4 starts against Vegas last year in the second round and had to sit on that all summer and get ready for this year. And what I love is what you just said, that after game 2, which was shaky, he's been splendid. He's been rebound control, his demeanor, his confidence, his body language. And tied to that, because it's hard to separate these things, the Oilers' blue line core has had a pretty good series after game 2. I mean, in LA, they boxed out, smart plays. Again, the work that Paul Coffey's doing with them, but that's tied to it too, I think.
100%. Gino, the last point I'll make as we throw it back to you, you look at what's happening in this Oiler lineup. So you got Vinny Desharnais, huge impact on the penalty. This is their 6th defenseman, huge impact on the penalty kill. Gets elevated and thrown out late in games to defend a 1-goal lead. You got Dylan Holloway up from the minors. Just bullied his way into a regular spot. He was on the 3rd line today, Gino. He actually got elevated from the 4th line up to the 3rd line. Warren Fogel's now down. So they have these guys that are homegrown who are making contributions, presenting upward pressure on the lineup. That's the kind of depth Stanley Cup champions have.
Exactly. Connor Brown hasn't played a game yet. Connor Brown finished pretty strong for the Edmonton Oilers after a difficult start to the year, but he's an excellent penalty killer. He's a veteran player. They brought him in for this time of year. He hasn't got in yet because there's no one to take out.
Yeah.
That's why you have depth.
Guys, you're bringing it. Playoff Pierre and postseason Rishaug delivering when it matters the most as the Oilers get set to host the LA Kings on Wednesday night with a chance to clinch and advance to the second round. Thanks for this, guys. Enjoy the game, and we'll talk to you again afterwards.